Hello and welcome to the Johnny Lawrence podcast. Today, I'm going to be talking about something that's happening in real time. Very often in this podcast, I talk about things that have happened in the past and I try to take away some lessons and some wisdom that I can share with others in hope that it helps them. But something's happening in my life right now that is happening in real time and it's exciting and it's interesting and it's unpredictable and there are things happening that I wouldn't have thought would have happened. But where did this journey start? Well, it started a few months back in February when I attempted to climb Kilimanjaro and I didn't get to the top. And I had this moment that I've spoken about a couple of times on this podcast where I had altitude sickness. It was pretty severe. It was the worst case I'd had so far. And I was determined to push to the top. I was scared. My body was letting me down. I was being really sick. I had very low blood oxygen levels, dizzy, fatigued, just the worst banging headache and racing heartbeat that I'd ever had. It was a very distressing experience. But yet I was very much willing to keep moving forward because I thought that was the right thing to do. But that was what it meant to be brave when I was faced with this fear. And the doctor and the instructor that I was with, they allowed me to try because that's what I asked. And they said, yep, sure, I can't stop you. It became very, very obvious to everybody that as I started to climb, that I wasn't going to make it. It became obvious to me at that point that I wasn't going to make it. And then I realized something in that moment, that being brave is about facing your fears. You have to be scared in order to be brave. But I wasn't facing what I was really scared of. What I was really scared of was failure. I was scared to turn around and say to my sons that dad didn't make it to the top. I was scared to tell all those people that had sponsored me, that had given up some of their hard-earned money because I told them I was going to get to the top, to turn around to them and say I didn't make it. But like I was saying, I wasn't good enough, that I was a big failure. I said to myself, nope, I'm going to keep putting one foot in front of the other and I'm going to get myself to the top. But that wasn't what really scared me. It was that feeling of failure that scared me. And it was as I put one foot in front of the other and I kept climbing, I thought I was being brave. But actually what I realized was the real bravery came when I turned around and started walking back down the hill. Now I was walking towards what I was scared of. And I realized something about my life. My life is a succession of trying not to fail, never allowing myself to be weak, never allowing myself to fail, even though I very often told people the opposite and meant it. And I realized that that was my lesson. I went to Kilimanjaro to fail. And then it started getting me thinking, well, if I've been scared to face failure all this time, what other things haven't I done? What other things have I avoided or gaslit myself into thinking I didn't need to do or I didn't want to do it? What am I missing out on? Where's the real growth here? If I convinced myself that climbing to the top was the brave thing when actually it was walking back down, where else had I done that in my life? And then came this thing. I've wanted for a very long time to try Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and it's been the best thing that I think I've done for myself in a very, very long time. But the truth is, I was scared of it for a really long time because I didn't want to go in there and find out that I was weak or that I couldn't do it or that I wasn't the toughest in the room or whatever else it was that I thought I was going to experience when I walked in there. I'd build it up to being this massive thing. And here's the thing with failure, you can't fail if you don't try. So I avoided it for a really long time. I'd watch my brother, I'm sure he wouldn't mind me say, go through some really hard times in life, and he will tell anyone that'll listen that it was jiu-jitsu that had saved him, that's put him back on the straight and narrow. And lately, I've noticed something really interesting. Now it's in my world, I've noticed more and more men saying that they need jiu-jitsu for their mental health. They need it. And actually, as I've been doing it, I'm starting to realize why. You see, so many men, women, And that's the other part of it as well. I'm going to talk a lot about men today. And the reason I'm doing that is because I am a man and I can speak to that. But I do see a lot of women on the mats too. Incredible women. I've been beaten up by a couple. It's insane. Absolutely crazy. But we live in this world where anxiety is everywhere. We're all so anxious and there's so many things in our lives now, social media, phones, all these different alerts and notifications we get, and they're just topping up our anxiety, keeping us anxious all of the time. We have low mood, stress, depression, all of these things. And jiu-jitsu seems to be a lifeline for them all. You see, jiu-jitsu is not about fighting, it's not about violence. Although obviously we are fighting and we are being violent, it's not about that. No one's going there for that. It's about feeling better. You see, going back to speaking about men are asked to speak more and more these days about their feelings. But the truth is, not many men know how to do that. And very often, for some men, for most men, the environment isn't right. That confrontational environment sat face to face with other men needing to look at each other. That works for some people. It doesn't work for everybody. There are some men like myself perhaps, that would find it far more confrontational to sit down and to look into other men's eyes and tell them how I'm feeling than it would be to put a gi on and start to do some jiu-jitsu. I'd probably find it more intimidating to sit and to talk in some cases. So why do I feel that jiu-jitsu is so helpful? I think one of the main things I've noticed is there's no masks on the mat. When you get on that mat, you are about as vulnerable as you can be. You can pretend to be tough. You can pretend to be anything you want. But as soon as you start rolling around with somebody, you're going to find out exactly what you are and who you are. And it's yours to accept or not. And it's not necessarily bad or good. It just tells you who you really are. And this is the thing in life. I think a lot of the time we're all putting these masks on. Maybe it's the parent mask. Maybe it's the partner mask. Maybe it's the friend or son or daughter mask. Maybe it's the employee or employer mask. Whatever it is, we're putting on these masks. And before we know it, we lose ourselves to who we think other people want us to be. And we end up with all these frustrations and all of these feelings and all of these conflicts and all of these confusions. And it's overwhelming. And when you get on that mat and you start rolling around, you can't be anyone else but who you are. Good and bad. And you get in there and you are in the moment. You are present for perhaps the first time that day, that week, that month, all year. And that has value. Because what I know about being a coach is that when someone sits in front of me, I don't have the answers to their problems. I don't have the solutions and what they should do with their life, but I know that they do. But how are they supposed to figure that out if they spend all their time wearing masks, doing jobs that other people want them to do, instead of knowing what they need to do for themselves? The next thing I noticed is that shared struggle builds trust. When you're rolling around with another guy or girl on the mat, you are experiencing struggle together, and it creates this connection. It creates this brotherhood. It creates this feeling where you're fighting with each other 1 second and the next minute you're laughing and shaking hands. I roll around on the mat, I get my ass kicked, and then I turn around and I say thank you. Because that's the point. It's this shared struggle. It's this feeling that we're all here at 6 a.m. in the morning and this is hard. Everything about it is hard. Everything. It's a really difficult thing to do. When there's so many moments where you could quit, but you didn't. Ignored the person next to you. Ignored the person in front of you. You're all sharing this struggle together. And after a while, it becomes quite funny and ridiculous. And you start to think, why are we all so crazy? And then there's that non-judgmental culture. Everybody in that room is there to improve. Not compete socially on who's got the most money or who's coolest or whatever's going on out in the real world. You're all there to improve. And here's the funny thing. When somebody gets a stripe or somebody gets a belt or somebody progresses in any way, somebody gets their first tap, somebody learns a move that they've been struggling to learn with, everyone in that room is over the moon. I watched 4 guys get their black belt recently, and I looked around the room and every single person in that room had a massive smile on their face. And there was genuine applause. Everyone was really happy to see that those men that got their black belts deserved it, that they'd been there helping other people. They've been there putting people in difficult situations so they can find the answers for themselves. They can work out what to do next. And they knew that. They watched it. They experienced it. And we all got to stand there and watch those guys get it. And we were all really, really happy for them. So everybody is there to improve. And part of that improving requires failure, as I spoke about earlier. I'm still in the fight for your life phase. I've only been doing jiu-jitsu now for a matter of months. And when I get in there, I'm fighting for my life, if I'm honest. And I'm frantic and I'm all over the place. And I'm only just learning to slow down. But when I look at the opponent I'm rolling around with, they are calm. A lot of the time, they're not even looking at me. They're looking up. And they're just feeling what I'm going to do next. And that level of calmness, that stress relief, that presence that they have, that calmness in mind, that's what I'm aiming for. I'm looking at them thinking, I want to be like that. I want to have that calmness. I want to wait and be patient and let the other person make a mistake so that I can get in there and do all this. It's just fabulous. It really is. And also, it makes that struggle normalized. All of those things that happen, that unpredictability, that struggle, that strain, that stress, that losing, that failure, that tiredness, that fatigue, all of those things just become normal. And actually then when you go out and you do your normal day, there's not a lot, unless you're having the worst day ever in the whole world. There's not a lot that can compare with that. So when you're rolling, you're being present, your overthinking goes away because you're just focused on surviving or winning or whatever level you're at. And it clears your head like nothing I've ever experienced. The brotherhood's important. It's a safe space for us to connect and to have a laugh and to share things with each other. So far since I've been there, I've spoken with people that have lost important people to them. I've spoken with people that have been scared because they're about to become a parent. I've spoken with people that have hurt themselves, injured themselves, lost their job, just generally experiencing one of the many struggles that life has to throw at you. How is it possible that I've been there for a few months and I know these things about these people? It's because there's an instant trust that's created. There's an idea that you're one of us as soon as you walk through those doors and you stick around. I don't think there's a lot of that for men these days. I don't think men find it very easy to find like-minded people in their lives. So what's this episode about? Is it just for me to sell jiu-jitsu? Not really. It's for me to explore it. Why is it that it took this for me to find something for myself that's really, really helping? It's for me to highlight it to the mums and dads, the brothers and sisters, the friends, that if you've got a man in your life or a woman that's struggling, that perhaps this could be something they could try. It's another string to the bow. That said, there are some lessons that I've learned from doing jiu-jitsu, some very clear lessons that seem to mirror and mimic life in quite a comedic way sometimes. These are lessons that I've learned from grappling, from failing, and they apply directly to life. The first lesson, and it's the one that I think I experience absolutely every single time I go, and that is get out of your own way. What this lesson has shown me is that very often it's self-sabotage that holds us back more than what we believe the external obstacles are in our life. They're not having enough money, they're not having enough time, not having enough whatever, not being slim enough, tall enough, good looking enough, successful enough, whatever it is, we think it's that. But actually, quite often, we are the ones in our own way. We're sabotaging ourselves. We're telling ourselves that we're scared of something else, when actually what that does is it provides us the best procrastination ever to avoid the thing we're really scared of. You see, in the early days of training, say early days, I'm still in the early days, but in the first few sessions, I used to freeze up a lot. Literally didn't know what to do. And I'd be second guessing myself all the time. And what is that? That's hesitating. And while I'm doing that, the other person's not going to sit and wait for Johnny to work it out. Nope, they implement what they've got to do and they beat me and they win. They tap me out. They do whatever they need to do to win. And here's the thing. I realized that I wasn't just losing because I didn't have the skill. I was losing because I was hesitating. And the reason I was hesitating is because I didn't want to look like I didn't know what I was doing, or that I was a failure, or I couldn't do it, or I was weak, or whatever it was that was going on in my head. During that hesitation, that's exactly what I was doing. You see, I wasn't always being beaten by my opponent. Quite a lot of the time, I was being beaten by myself. I was overthinking, procrastinating, experiencing paralysis of some kind. And life parallels that beautifully a lot of the time. The same patterns happen everywhere in our life. We might say to ourselves that we're going to go to the gym, but we avoid going to the gym because we're worried that people are going to judge us in some way. We don't know what we're doing in there, or we don't look right, or we're not a gym person. Well, we're not. We've never been before, but we're going to learn. And in a year's time, you will be a gym person. And you'll probably see someone walk through that door who looks exactly like you did right at that point. Not speaking up at work because you're afraid of being wrong, only to find a couple of days down or a couple of weeks down the line that you wish you had spoken up. And then you get angry at yourself and blame yourself, when actually all you needed to do was just say your bit. And you could have been wrong, but you also could have been right. And then delaying starting a project or a business because you're not ready, never actually defining what ready means. Therefore, never ever being ready. Therefore, never actually starting that project or that business. And then we get all the way down the line in life and we spend our time wondering what if, drowning in our own regrets, instead of having a success or a failure to accept or learn from. So what are the key takeaways from that first lesson of get out of your own way? Well, the first one is name that inner critic. Call out that voice in your head that says, don't do it. You'll look stupid. Call it out. The second one is act before overthinking takes over. Just do it. This amazing moment where we do the 6 a.m. club and we get in there and there's so many. If I'd had the time, by the time we get to 10 past or whatever, we're all rolling around doing rounds. And had it been drawn out, we'd start drinking coffee and chatting. We'd probably all find reasons and fear or intimidation or whatever it is. Oh, I'm not feeling awake today or whatever. We'd find excuses and we'd never get round to it. We just get on with it. We just do it before we've even got time to think about it. Before you know it, you're in it and you're doing it. And you're in that moment and you're making decisions and you're actually in flow. So make decisions and move, even if it's imperfect. Even if you recognize that it might not be the right time, just do something, anything. Move forward in some way and focus on the moment. Don't think 10 steps ahead. Just think one step. Just take that step, in fact. Just do it. And before you know it, you're moving. Handle what's in front of you right now, just like when you're defending a choke. You got no chance to think about what's for dinner. You're defending a joke and that's all you're doing. Because that's the other thing about it. Sometimes we get really obsessed with making progress all the time. But what I found in jiu-jitsu is there's a hell of a lot of success in just staying alive, just staying in the right place, working for a move, for a position and keeping it. There's a lot of success found in those little areas. It's interesting that we never see that for ourselves in real life. Second lesson, just do it. Just do it. Whatever it is, just do it. Fail and then learn. See, here's the big lesson for me. The biggest one of them all, I think, and that is to normalize failure and show it as an essential part of progress. I didn't realize I was so scared of failure. I didn't know that. And then when I started doing jiu-jitsu, the only way to learn is to fail. You see, being submitted repeatedly creates frustration and your ego takes a massive hit. You feel like you should be better. You should I've been doing this now a couple of weeks, couple of months. I should be way better than I am. And there's all the people that are better than you just go, mate, just keep at it. Just keep going. And you're not seeing that you are getting better, realizing that every submission was actually a lesson. You don't really understand a move until you've been caught by it 10 different ways. That's when you really get it. And if we apply that to life, people quit too early because they misinterpret failure. They think failure equals proof that they're not capable of doing something, when the truth is that failure is just feedback. The more you fail, the quicker you grow, if you're paying attention. So here's some practical steps, some stuff that I put into place in my real life outside of the mat. I'm constantly trying and putting effort into reframing failure by stop saying I failed. I try not to say that anymore. I've started saying I'm learning, because that's what I'm doing when I'm on the mat. That tap, well, of course I got tapped by a black belt, a blue belt, a brown belt. I shouldn't even have a belt right now, but I've got a white belt. Of course I'm going to lose. So for me, it's how did I lose? What could I do differently? And the day that I put that into action feels like an absolutely massive win. Not necessarily in that moment, because what it does is it puts into action all of the effort that I've been putting in over time. And when I defend it, or even put that choke on myself, now I feel like I'm making progress. But it wasn't just that moment, it was all the moments before that. Another thing I do sometimes, not all the time, I'm working on it, is a journal a little bit. After every setback in my real life, I write down what it taught me. It's hard. It's hard to do. But I tell you what, when you write down, taking accountability for where you made a mistake or something didn't quite go the way you had hoped, you failed or you experienced a setback, when you write it down, it imprints on your soul. And then you have the opportunity to make sure that that never happens again. You can grow from that failure. It's like the big forest fire that happens, that clears the deck and allows all this new growth to come through. And the last thing about that is to fail faster. Don't hide from your mistakes. The faster you fail, the faster you will grow. I can promise you that. Speaking of failure, I've been sober now for almost 5 years. And people think that I made a decision one day and then the next day that was it. That was the start of my sobriety journey. But that's not true. For so many years, I would sit with my wife and I'd promise her that this was the last time I was going to drink like that, and that I was going to go sober, and that this is what I was going to do. And I would fail. I'd do dry January or sober October, get to the end of the month and get right back to it again. And what I never realized is it's a bit like a baby learning to walk. A baby stands up and doesn't just nail it, doesn't just start running, doing jumping jacks and saying, hey man, I've nailed this walking. No. It stands up and it falls down. He stands up and it falls down, stands up and it falls down. And in that time, he's strengthening those muscles and he's learning where he went wrong. And that's what happened with my sobriety journey. I had to fail all of those times in order to strengthen those muscles, to figure out where I'm going wrong, figure out what works, what doesn't. You see, recovery, for me, becoming sober, alcohol-free, was a series of failures before that lasting change. Each failure taught me something vital about the next attempt until I got to that final attempt and success. I've been sober for almost 5 years. And then the last lesson, the one that's probably the hardest because it continues to be hard no matter what. Practice doing hard things. Doing hard things forces your mind and your body to work together. And I think the point of this lesson is to show that deliberate discomfort is the key to growth. You see, on the mat, the positions you hate the most are where you need to spend the most time. I will never like that that's true, but it is true. The positions that you hate the most are where you need to spend the most time. But you hate them. They're uncomfortable. You feel like a failure. There's pretty much nothing about those situations and positions that you want to be involved in, but they are where you need to be in order to improve. Being stuck in mount, defending submissions, rolling with a higher belt, they don't feel good. And you rarely go into those situations with any sort of confidence. But if we avoid it, we stay weak in that area forever. And it will always become a real life insecurity. And life parallels that all the time. Because the areas that you avoid are where growth is waiting. I used to avoid public speaking. And all that meant was that fear was controlling me all the time. Now I'm delivering talks all over the place, and so many people are getting something from it, thank goodness. You avoid a difficult conversation, and that relationship suffers because you can't have the hard conversations. You can't say the hard things, the things that need to be said and heard, so you can find solutions and you can move through it together. Quite often those hard conversations, the ones that you fear and dread, the ones that you have so much anxiety around that you just fill in the gaps. Quite often they're the conversations that bring us closer together. Or you avoid looking at your bad habits and you stay stuck in them. In fact, many times by avoiding looking at your bad habits, you give them the opportunity to grow and get worse. So here are some practical steps. This is a hard step. Create an avoidance list. Write down all of the things that you've been dodging. Be unapologetically honest. Be brutal. Be savage. But write it down. Your avoidance list, and then just take one of those things, the easiest, smallest, most simplest one that you can find on that list, and face that thing this week. Face it, no matter what it is. Face it. Do something in that area. Something that scares you. Something that you know deep in your soul should have been done a long time ago. Something that you've built up to be this massive problem. When actually, when you get there, you'll find it's not. It was a kid's book I used to read to my son, and there was this dark alley with a big shadow at the end for what was assumed to be a terrifying monster. And then one day, the person goes to the end of the alley to find that it was a shadow of a mouse on the wall, looking big and scary. And actually, there was nothing to fear but the fear itself. Whew, that was cheesy. Next thing you could do, build discomfort. Treat discomfort like a muscle. Gamify it. Practice using that discomfort. When you're in there, know that change is happening, growth is happening, that you're developing, that you're getting better in some way, even though it doesn't feel like it in that moment. Because the more you train that muscle, the easier things get. The stronger that muscle gets, the more it can hold, the more it can push, the more it can sustain. You see, comfort is where growth goes to die. If you only do what's easy, you'll never find out who you really are. And if you're listening to podcasts like this, reading books, self-developing yourself, then you know who you should be. You know who you can be, and you are on that path. And there will be many, many moments where it's uncomfortable. But it's all right. You can do it. You are doing it. This has been a long one. This has been way longer than I thought it'd be. I have a lot more to say about it, as you can tell. I'm very passionate about this. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that you need to go out and do jiu-jitsu, but you could try it. I want to say a massive thank you to the entire team at Resolute BJJ here in Cornwall. I'm sure it's the case for so many people. And I think there was one guy who reached out to me in the beginning and said, you're going to want to quit so many times when you start this journey. And they're right. Because a couple of weeks ago, I got to a point where I really thought I wanted to quit. I'd hurt my back, not doing jiu-jitsu, doing something else, ironically. I was feeling ill and under the weather. I had all the pressures of different things that I was doing in my career. And I just thought, what am I doing? I'm 45 years old. Why am I doing this? I don't need to do this. And I really thought about quitting. And then my son started doing it. I won't talk a lot about it, but he's had some hard times recently. And seeing him do that makes me happy in ways I can't express, truly. And he wanted to go to this seminar. And I went to the seminar. And if I'm honest, I wasn't in the right headspace to learn. So I didn't get what I needed until the end. And when I saw those 4 lads get their black belt, I realized I was there for more than just jiu-jitsu. I was there for the brotherhood. I was there because there was a bunch of imperfect people trying their best. And one guy got his black belt and he said that he was proud of himself and he was glad he got the black belt. But what was most important to him is that he got to roll around with his friends every day. Man, that meant the world to me, and to see my son doing it means even more. So the big picture takeaways for me are that jiu-jitsu is more than a sport, it's a mirror. It mirrors life. It shows you who you are and what you're capable of in good situations and bad. It shows you your strengths. And I've been told many times I'm quite a strong guy. Quite often that strength is used against me. And I find myself in a position they want me to be in, not in the one I want to be in. Shows you your weaknesses, shows you your fears, shows you your patterns, just like in real life. The mat doesn't care about your excuses. It simply asks you one thing. What are you going to do now? What are you going to do next? Now that you're in this moment in real life, what's your next move? That is the constant nagging demand of doing jiu-jitsu. So just to recap, my lessons were: get out of your own way. Quite often, you're the source of your own self-sabotage, obviously. Fail often as you can, and learn. It's only when you've failed at something 10 different ways do you really understand it. Practice doing hard things, because that's where all the lessons are. That's when your body and your mind work together and you experience flow. So here's my challenge for you guys out there that have listened today, and thank you because it's been a long one, is identify one hard thing that you've been avoiding and commit to facing it this week, no matter how small. If you got something from this episode, I want you to share it. I'd love you to share it, in fact. And if you could go and you could give it 5 stars, it's literally 2 seconds it takes, and it has a massive impact on the podcast's reach and the amount of people that get to hear it. This episode's felt quite self-indulgent, so if you're not even remotely interested in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I'm very sorry. But hopefully you've taken the analogy from it and the lessons that I've learned, and how it might even be helpful for men in your life, or if you are a man, it might be helpful for you. And I understand entirely why you might be scared of it. I was for a very long time. And sometimes I am anyway. It's a scary place. It's also an incredible place where you can grow and learn about yourself. This would usually be the moment where I talk a lot about doing the self-made course, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to mention that there is a self-made course. There's a link in the bio. If you're interested, go and check it out. The made model is literally changing lives, which is a massive source of pride for me, but I'm not going to labor it on because we are well over time now. So thank you for listening to me today. And just remember this, don't just think about it, take action today. Thank you for listening to the Johnny Lawrence podcast, and I'll see you next week for another episode.